What's up, you filthy casuals? Welcome to Casual Shenanigans Tech, a podcast where me, Jeremiah, and my co-host Dave, hey Dave.
We're the dedicated ones,
Exactly.
you could say. Yeah.
Every fourth week, we hop in, and instead of doing a regular Casual Shenanigans podcast, we do Casual Shenanigans Tech, where we answer your computer build and related questions. So you can write in to be a part of the show at casualshenanigans@gmail.com. And as always, we will send you back links and reply to you if we are able to answer your question. We try to get to everybody's as soon as we can, although in this case it's been about a month and a half, so please forgive us. And if you need clarifications, you can always write back in and we'll see what we can do to help.
And additionally, if you're Joel and you're about to go to sleep, don't forget to brush your teeth.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we start the show, like we always do, Dave, with the rig report.
The rig report. Dun 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 dun. He's more like royal, like regal versus news broadcast every time.
More like, I hate this, so I'm just going to give it as much fanfare as possible every time. So we actually have pretty substantial rig reports this time for both of us.
Yeah, we got to condense this down because it's been, like a month and a half since the last
Well, I think
episode?
the biggest update for each of us has just been the one thing each, right?
Dude, my entire office is different.
Actually, that's true. My entire I've redone my whole desk setup as well.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stick to just the main thing. So you can go first.
Yeah. The TLDR for the office is that completely redid my desk. Basically finished the office remodel. Got a couch, a display shelf full of awesome memorabilia. I have surround sound speakers now, which I'm actually upgrading those again this week already.
Yes, the sickness.
Ah, man. It's just a really pleasant workspace now.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna do I guess you could call it a setup video at some point. But yeah, it's really great. But like the centerpiece of it is new monitor, and almost as exciting for me, a new stand that has gotten my monitors not above my face anymore, where I'm like looking up into them, but closer to me and eye level. But I also got, instead of my 1440p mono-priced IPS screen from 2014 that was a good stand-in for going to 1440p for a year or two, I switched it out with a ViewSonic IPS panel, 1440p and 144 hertz, up to 165 if you overclock it, and G-Sync. So it was like 5 upgrades in one. And it's fantastic. Like you've tried it out too. High frame rate is really cool, but we've both become believers in G-Sync, one could say.
Yeah, I mean, so you were talking about getting a 1440p G-Sync monitor, because of course if you're going to get a high-end IPS 1440p monitor, which is really popular for high-end gaming rigs, at this point you kind of be stupid not to get G-Sync or FreeSync. Like the price difference, if you're doing a high-end rig, is not that much. For FreeSync, I mean, it's almost nothing. For G-Sync, of course, it's a couple $100 extra, but like we're talking high-end monitors again. So it makes a lot of sense to step up to that if you want a real upgrade. So not only did you get the smaller bezels and less IPS bleed and all that other stuff, you got a really, really awesome experience. Now, you said we're a big believer in G-Sync. Were you expecting G-Sync to be the bigger difference or 144 hertz?
I expected, honestly, neither to be mind-blowing, both of them just to be like, oh, cool upgrades, because after having tried G-Sync, I'm really surprised you don't hear more people like jumping up and down on the internet, shouting from the rooftops about it, like, hey guys, this changes things, kind of like SSDs did for hard drives. It's a big difference.
Yeah, and I would say 144 hertz is cool, although to be fair, when you're using a G-Sync monitor, when I was playing like Battlefield at your place, it was more like 90 to 144 FPS, like it goes all over the place. Even with a 1080, it's not like you're pegged at 144 the whole time, especially on an online game. That's just not realistic. It's good. I've heard people swear that like 144 hertz or 120 hertz just changes your life and it's so smooth you can never go back. I don't know about that. I mean, part of it maybe I'm just getting old, but it felt really, really smooth. And I felt like I was hitting some shots I wouldn't have otherwise. Like I was winning some engagements I wouldn't have otherwise. And it was definitely really, really cool.
Yeah.
But I went back to my 60 hertz 4K monitor, that I've had for a couple years, and I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Unlike G-Sync, where I was playing The Witcher 3 at like 45 FPS, cranked up on your settings, like at a higher resolution at 4K, like overdriving your monitor.
Exactly.
And it felt like I was almost at 60 FPS just because on a regular monitor, just because it was so smooth. And then playing Battlefield 1 where it was going between, we messed with some other settings at one point. I think it was going like 70 to 120 FPS or something. And it just felt great the entire time. Like everything I tried with
it was
G-Sync,
surprising.
it was just like, oh, this just fixes this now. Like it just works. Here you go. Like everything feels smooth from now on. Even I tried The Witcher 3 at the mid 20s and I didn't want to play at mid 20s, but it felt like I could if I wanted to.
Yeah, the frame timings were still good, and it was playable.
Yeah,
weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and of course, all the things I've heard about G-Sync are really good, but I've heard a lot more positive stuff about 144 hertz monitors. People just swear by, and I mean, I still think it's good. Like, I'm not saying the 144 hertz was bad or anything, but if I had to pick one or the other, I told you I definitely would pick G-Sync.
And then what did you do?
And then what did I do? Well, I've been wanting a larger monitor because I had a 27-inch 4K, which looks incredibly sharp. But it's debatable that's not big enough to really take advantage of 4K because you can't see any of the pixels at all. So the thinking is, what if you had a bigger screen? It would still look really, really good, and you would just have more real estate. And I like big screens. You know me. My 27-inch was getting to the point where I was like, well, this is okay, but like it could be bigger. And
the screen size matches the person.
And just like the person, when you go too big, it's not great at all. My first attempt was I read a bunch of reviews on rteens.com. I think it might be pronounced ratings.com, but ratings is too popular of a thing. rtings.com. They do reviews of TVs, but they actually measure like response times and black levels and all kinds of stuff. Like they're extremely in-depth. They're like the Digital Foundry Plus of TV reviews, and they have a recommendation section for people who are doing for who want to use their stuff as a computer monitor. And I picked one of the highest rated TVs that you can use as a computer monitor, which is it was a Samsung KS3000 40-inch 4K. I believe it's a VA panel if I remember correctly. So not IPS, but also very good. And I got that, had that for a couple days, ended up sending it back because I was used to an extremely good computer monitor. Like my current 4K monitor at the time was a Dell Ultra Sharp. So the stand, the casing, the USB ports, the quality of the backlight, all that was just top notch. Like it's a top notch monitor. The only things I didn't like was it was kind of small and it was only 60 hertz. I know 27 inches is not necessarily kind of small, but for me on my desk, it was kind of small.
First world problem.
So what I really wanted was big without losing a ton of quality. I was willing to give up a few things, but not a ton. So that 40-inch TV, granted, that's really big to put on a desk. But the main problem was that it just didn't look good enough compared to the Dell. It was big enough that there was a lot of ghosting because, like, playing at 30 FPS, a lot is moving in between frames. And I was just sitting too close. Even when I scooted it back, it wasn't great. And then the panel just isn't as good quality as the Dell, which makes sense. It was like a $400 4K TV. Like, it's actually a pretty good TV, but it's just not high quality enough to be a computer monitor for me since I've had high quality computer monitors.
Yeah, going from a Dell to that is a rough switch.
Yeah,
their build quality is nuts.
So I started doing some research on one of my options, and from playing at your house, I knew that G-Sync mattered to me a lot more than 144 hertz. 144 hertz was cool, but G-Sync was like, especially if someone who plays at 4K, so I'm rarely locked at 60 FPS in every single game.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, G-Sync was like, oh, like if I could play at 45 or 50 FPS, this is game changing, literally for me.
Oh,
so I settled on, I shopped a bunch of monitors. The problem is all the really nice monitors are expensive. I settled on a refurbished Acer Predator 32-inch 4K IPS G-Sync monitor. It's a 60...
Settled on with a turn of phrase.
I mean, it is one of the most expensive gaming monitors on the market if it's not refurbished. But, yeah, it's a 32-inch 4K G-Sync 60 hertz monitor. So it has G-Sync. It's high quality. It has like the height adjustment. It can't rotate just because it's too wide, like it's too big to rotate on its stand. It has VESA mounts. It has USB ports. It has all that stuff. Only thing it doesn't really have, it doesn't have DVI or VGA, which I guess isn't really the end of the world because I have to use DisplayPort to use G-Sync anyway.
Can VGA actually work with 4K?
No, no. I don't think the Dell has VGA either, actually, but it does have DVI, I believe. I don't know if DVI can do 4K. Actually, I don't think it can either, but it can support like other resolutions and stuff. This Acer is not designed to be compatible with all of your legacy hardware. It's designed for really high-end gaming stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I don't know who bought them at $1,600, which was the list price. I see them listed more commonly now at $1,200. Don't know if I would buy one at $1,200. At $775. Again, that's an obscene amount of money compared to what I've spent on monitors in the past. But you know, I could have spent the same amount on a new 1440p like ROG Swift or ViewSonic like yours. So like, it's not that ridiculous if you think about it along those lines. And I redid a lot of stuff in my office and sold a bunch of things, so I actually didn't pay any money out of pocket for it.
Nice.
But I mean, of course,
plus, a good monitor is like a 6-7 year investment.
Hopefully. I mean, my last one was a 2-year investment.
Well, yeah, so was mine. But before that, it was 5 or 6 years. So, you know, we'll see.
And I think the most telling thing about this monitor is that I've had it for a day now. I haven't actually gamed on it. I've had it for 2 days. I set it up right before I was working out on Tuesday, and then Debbie went to look at it and then played GTA for 45 minutes while I was exercising. So it's got a little bit of a gaming workout, but I've just been doing normal work on it in the evenings, and I haven't thought about the backlight or motion blur or anything else while I'm using it. Like, as far as I can tell, it's exactly the same experience as using my Dell, except bigger. And the couple of games I tried really briefly, G-Sync is awesome. So for me, I'm not gonna say it's the perfect upgrade, but if I was picking my perfect monitor, this is about it. And I honestly don't think I'd want to go any larger on my desk. 32 inches is about perfect. So I'm extremely happy, and then I'm going to start chipping money away for an eventual GPU upgrade. Although with G-Sync, this 980 Ti can probably stretch out quite a bit longer. So
yeah, I can't wait to try out that monitor though, because like, you know, I agree with you. The high frame rate is cool, and because I'm sticking with 1440p, that's where I wanted to land anyway. But like, your exact monitor might be the one that I get for my first 4K one down the road.
Yeah, although by that point, you know, there probably be like a 120 hertz or 144 hertz version. Like, we'll see what the prices are. Maybe it'll be worth just getting one of those someday. But
have to drop a lot, otherwise I'm going right back to 60 for the 4K upgrade.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
Good stuff though.
Yeah, absolutely. You ready to get into some questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Benjamin wrote back in, and he was the guy who was putting together a super budget PC for a friend of his, and he thought it was like a half-width, small form factor pre-built computer, and he was trying to see what they could do with it. And a friend of his donated a 750 Ti, which he thought was a small form factor card, and he was all excited. Turns out it was just really short. It wasn't small form factor, it was just stubby. So he said, while I initially thought it was a deal breaker, I realized I had access to an arc welder and some metal shears, so I started thinking, now what's on the drawing board is a custom side panel that will have what looks like a freaking shark fin popping out of the center of the case to keep the card properly seated, as well as channel airflow to it. No idea how well it will do, but I figured this development would be interesting enough to share. I call it Project Sharkbait.
Well, that's something new.
Okay. Next question is from Killerken. Yeah, he doesn't have another name. Killerken. He says, hello, I've written in before, I believe, about if I should get a R9 390 or GTX 970. I have a similar question now, except it's about higher end cards. I already have a Skylake i7, so my CPU is fine. But I encountered an error. I can't play Minecraft with 500 FPS or play Battlefield 1 at 8K and 120 FPS. All jokes aside, I just want a good high-end card. But I don't want to spend $1,000, so no Titans just yet. This time I'm planning to go NVIDIA, so I need to know if I should get a 1080 or a 980 Ti and which type. He talks about here there was a problem with the EVGA 1080 with heat. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, he supports us on Patreon as well. His name is Ken. There it is. His name is Ken. He supports us on Patreon. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon, Ken. So Dave, he wants to go NVIDIA. He wants a high-end card. He doesn't want to spend $1,000. What should he do?
Well, you can go somewhere around the halfway mark and get a 1080, especially if you watch for, you know, a good deal on a Zotac or one of the cheaper brands that's just perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. I actually just saw today that PC Gamer's recommended card remains the 1070 for high end.
Which is essentially a 980 Ti, but with 2 more gigs of VRAM and a little more power efficient. Like it's very, very similar in performance.
Yeah, and if you don't want to go all out, below the Titan, but still not quite all out, the 1070 is a great place to land, I think.
Yeah, and if he's still playing at 1080p, like I probably wouldn't get a 1080, not because there aren't some games that can't absolutely destroy it, but for your money, a $350 1070 is gonna, like in most games, is still gonna be exceptional.
Oh yeah,
and you mentioned 980 Ti's, even though that's not technically the current gen. I have one. I'm gaming at 4K, and I'm pretty happy. You could try to get a used 980 Ti. I've seen them for under $300 over and over and over again, used and refurb 980 Ti's. So they're still fairly power efficient, and they're still really powerful. Like, it was the best card in the world a year ago. There's no...
yeah.
It's not like it's a bad card. If you can get one for under 300, that's probably the way I'd go. If you want to spend like 350 to 400, I'd get a 1070. If you want to spend 5 to 550, 500 would only be a really good sale. Plan on 550 to 600 for a 1080. The thing is, the 1080 Ti should be coming out soon.
Should be.
We don't know how
Maybe.
soon. They didn't announce it at CES. I'd imagine Q1 of this year. So if you're not in a huge rush, if you still have a 970 or a 390, or you enjoy whatever card you have at the moment, I mean, you could try to string it out for a little while, wait for the 1080 Ti to come out, wait for prices to drop, if you're not in a big rush.
Yeah.
As far as which 1080s are good if he goes that route, which one did you get?
I'm looking a Zeus, I believe.
No, it was a Gigabyte. Was it? Wait, it's got the fan. It has the RGB fan stuff.
It's Republic of Gamers.
Okay,
is that a Zeus or
that's a Zeus. Okay. Oh, more people are doing the stupid fans thing. The Potato Masher Pro's Gigabyte 1060 has the RGB lights on it. I thought it was maybe only one brand doing it. Oh, more people are doing it. That's cool.
Oh, Joel actually asked. We were actually recording some Fallout last night. The icon on my desktop is like AURA, all caps. And Joel's like, what is Aura? I'm like, I think it's supposed to be Aurora or Aura. I was like, it's the RGB thing for the graphics card. I have opened it literally once to set the graphics card to orange LEDs to match my case lights, and then never opened it again. And I just got a replacement Logitech G502 because my cord on the old one's ripping. And now it can do 16 million colors in the logo for some reason. Like, why? Like, it's cool, but man, last year was the year of LEDs, it seems like.
And one other thing he writes, he has a Vive. So not only does he have a 1080p or 1440p or 4K monitor, but he wants to run things on a Vive, which I think like a 980 Ti is probably the minimum you want to go with. But I don't know if I would commit a ton more than that to a Vive unless you really have the money to burn, just because that's still a very new thing. And while you can use a 1080, you could also get a 980 Ti, let's say for $300, and then instead of spending almost $600 on a 1080, you could get a 980 Ti now, use that for like a year or two, and then pick up a 1080 when they hit like the $400 mark. When newer cards come out, sell your 980 Ti for probably $200, get a 1080, and keep inching your way up that way.
Yeah,
I don't think I would go all the way to the top right now just because new cards are coming out and
not at just 1080p. I agree.
But I don't know what his monitor is like, but the Vive is about equivalent to running at 1440p as far as the demands on the system. It depends on the game, of course. But all right, next email is from Alex. He's written in before. Okay, he says, I've written in here 1 or 2 times before looking for builds for friends. It turns out the Scorpio and the Pro aren't doing too much to help sales after all. Well, Project Scorpio is not going to be out for a year, so that doesn't surprise me. You've done better jobs than I could each time, so I've come crawling back for more. This time I need a build within 500 to 600 pounds. Euros. I think that's the Euros symbol. For the purpose of gaming, with document editing, web browsing, etc. We already are getting Windows on the cheap and a monitor as a gift, but we need the PC still, as well as a keyboard and mouse. The PC I jumbled together looked like this. You went with a 470 over a 1060 due to FreeSync, although we could go without it depending on how much of a performance gap there is, as they are similarly priced. The ideal keyboard and mouse looking for is a Cooler Master CM Storm Devastator 2 red LED one. That's a name. It's the gaming. He says the ultra hyper gaming name. I know. It's just because it kind of feels like a mechanical keyboard and is at least better than anything else at that price. It is $25 for a mouse and keyboard. So like that's honestly pretty good. He says, thanks very much. I'm eagerly awaiting a reply. So the build he put together is a i5 6400, MSI H110 motherboard, 8 gigs of Kingston Fury RAM, 1 terabyte Seagate Barracuda hard drive, RX 470 Strix graphics card, a fractal design mid-tower case, an EVGA 600 watt power supply, and a Cooler Master Devastator 2, etc., etc., etc. So I made a couple edits to that. The i5 6400 is 2.7 gigahertz, can't be overclocked. This is base clock. So I added a i5 6500, which is 3.2 gigahertz, because it's about 30 more pounds, but the extra 500 megahertz will be helpful on a processor you're not going to overclock. To compensate for that additional cost, I lowered the motherboard a little bit because it's still an H110, so it's gigabyte, it's fine. The RAM's fine. I put in a Western Digital Caviar Blue 1 terabyte because it saved a little money over the Seagate. A gigabyte RX 470 because it saved a little money over the whichever one he picked, the Asus, and Gigabyte is a better brand. The Bitphoenix Nova case because it was cheaper. A Corsair 500 watt power supply because it was cheaper, and I picked the blue Cooler Master bundle because that's the one that was in stock. Just pick whatever. So his build was 597 euros. This one is 605 euros. Faster processor, better graphics card. Everything else is about the same. What do you think?
I approve.
Cool. All right. I mean, this is pretty straightforward.
You asking for permission?
This is a really solid, mid-range gaming setup. You should be happy with this for quite a few years. You'll be able to upgrade stuff later on pretty easily. Like, no big deal. Good build.
Yeah.
Ask any more questions if you have them. I wouldn't count on the Cooler Master Devastator being too mechanical keyboard-like. It just looks like it should be a mechanical keyboard. Like, they're fine, but...
And actually, if you're already there, I would recommend the Cooler Master CM Storm mechanical keyboards. They're more expensive, obviously, but they're at the low end of mechanical keyboards.
How expensive is a little more expensive? Because this is $25 for a bundle.
Oh, yeah, that is a big difference.
I mean, you're talking low end is like, what, $70 for a Storm?
But yeah, I've been spending too much time on r/mechanical keyboards. That's what's going on here. Maybe leave that for a future upgrade. I do love my Cooler Master CM Storm, just white backlight, brown switch mechanical keyboard. So maybe, hop to that next.
Yeah.
Down the road.
All right, up next is Forrest. Forrest says, hey guys, I'm considering upgrading my processor. I'm currently running an i5 4460 and it isn't causing me any problems yet, but I would like to try to future-proof my build a little bit. I'm going to take a quick side note. I'm not picking on Forrest at all. Forrest is an awesome guy. Don't future-proof your build. Buy whatever makes the most sense now and for the next, 2 or 3 years. So if that's what you mean by future-proofing, do that. But you have no idea where computing's going 5 years from now, and chances are all the good stuff will get just cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and, just buy whatever makes the most sense then. So he says, I've been looking at the i7 4790K. That's what I have. I'd like to know if you think it would be a worthwhile investment. If there's a better option you would suggest, I just ask that you don't exceed $350 and keep it on the LGA 1150 socket. Also, let me know if there are any other suggestions for my build that I can look into in the long term. So, here's his current specs. He has a i5 4460, an MSI H97 motherboard, and a 16 gigs of RAM, a GTX 1060, a 750 watt XFX power supply, and a Corsair Carbide 100R case. What do you think? 4790K, different upgrade for 350, or something else?
I mean, there's definitely a reason that you picked your CPU. That's a hugely popular choice for that socket, and for good reason too.
Yeah. I wouldn't get one though, because he has an H97 motherboard, which is not the best socket for overclocking. You can overclock, but not that you need to. I mean, honestly, my 4790K is at stock speeds right now because I was messing with some stuff a few months ago, and it's fine. I haven't felt the need to up it again for anything. I probably will at some point, but it's totally fine even at stock speeds. But you're going to buy a K processor that you can't overclock. Also, I went on Anantech's CPU bench, which is a great website for comparing the objective performance of multiple processors, and they didn't have a 4460, but I found the closest thing to it, and it's not that different from the 4790K. They're the same architecture. The only difference is the 4790K is a little bit higher clock speed, has a little more cache, whatever, and has hyper-threading. So for video editing, there's like a 25% difference. For most other things, there's like a 5 to 10% difference. And while that's fine, I mean, he's saying up to $350. Like, you should get a good upgrade if you're going to go $350 more money.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So I don't want to say wait for Zen or Ryzen, whatever, AMD's new thing. It's probably still like 2 or 3 months out, but if you're not in a rush, you can always wait and see how that shakes the market up, Maybe there'll be like a really attractively priced octo core for like $250. You can throw that in with a motherboard and be good to go, I think that's my recommendation. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, if he's not in too much of a hurry, that's just around the corner, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'd lean. If it was me, I think I would probably just wait until you know what's going to happen with Ryzen, and then make your decision then. Because if your processor's still fine for now, things will only get cheaper, and you'll have a lot more clarity in the next couple months about whether or not you can get a good value for the money. Regardless of what you do, I would not get a 4790K with the rest of your current setup. I do not think that would be worth $350. All right, our next one is from Robert. Now, we took a while to answer a lot of questions this time because we were on a bit of a CS Tech break during December. So Robert had originally written in with a question about building a gaming PC for his little brother using his old GTX 560 Ti, and he had a problem where he needed a new power supply because his current one did not have 2 6-pin connectors, and a 560 Ti needs 2 6-pin connectors. I looked it up. Yeah, I looked it up. The TDP of the card is something like 175 watts. It needs 30 amps on the 12-volt rail is what they recommend. It's like, geez. He says he solved the PSU problem. I hope he did it for cheap. I know that was his priority. If it was me, like going forward, I would sell the 560 Ti and get like a 750 Ti or a GTX 1050. Because for the money you get from selling the 750 Ti or selling the 560 Ti and the money you would spend on a new PSU, like $35-$40, you could almost buy a GTX 1050. So, that's probably what I'd do. But
yeah, for sure.
But he actually writes in with another question. He says, because I wrote back and said, I'm really sorry we took this long to get back to you. Do you still need this answered? He said, no worries, I already solved the PSU problem, but I think his motherboard is fried. The CPU is still fine, I think. Any recommendations for a cheap CPU motherboard combo? The CPU is currently a Q6600, so it's not terribly bad with the 560 Ti, but if we can squeeze in a little more clueless power, that would be nice. I don't really know I don't know if that's a typo. He was typing it from his phone, so that may be a typo, but maybe
I kind of like that. Clueless power?
I'm gonna assume you might mean cheap power. So, Dave, if you want good, cheap CPU power, what's the first thing you should do?
Probably an octo-core Intel is your immediate choice. No, only if you hate money. I'm realizing that I'm actually really far behind on both CPU, motherboard, and RAM market. It's just because I haven't done any kind of real upgrades for those since 2014. So I'm gonna pass.
Well, being far behind is fine in this case. If I said, let's say cheap, Dave, you have $120 to get a CPU and motherboard combo, however you want. What are you gonna do?
Well, now I know which tax bracket I'm in. AMD, we're going all AMD.
I was trying to lead you into something. I thought it'd be cool. So this is to let everybody know the amount of prep work we do for this show. We're not setting any of these up ahead of time.
Hold my hand, Jeremiah. Hold my hand.
First thing, AMD actually would be a great choice. So you're not wrong at all. I would think like a used Intel quad core with a motherboard is probably where I would go. Like a used i5 2500K.
Yeah.
With a motherboard. Of course, the question is how comfortable are you with used parts and what deals can you find, et cetera, et cetera. But a used like i7 920 with a motherboard, don't buy without the motherboard. Those motherboards are like oil in the, or water in the desert at this point. Or a used, like a i5 750, kind of getting old, but still be okay. Or like something from Sandy Bridge. All that would be pretty cool. If you want to go new, I think you could do pretty well with a AMD like the FX 4300 quad core, pretty basic. You could get that and a motherboard together for like 125 or so. If you want to go also in the same price range, an Intel G4400. You know, we don't normally recommend dual core processors, but I'm guessing this gaming rig is not playing a lot of new stuff. It's playing a lot of older games, it sounds like.
Yeah.
In that case, a G4400 would be great. And you could always upgrade it to a better CPU later on that same socket. So I'm going to send them links to a G4400 and an ASRock H110 motherboard. But, Robert, you know, all those other things are options as well. And like Dave said, I guess we sound kind of snooty some of the time, but we both moved our processors and stuff up market enough that honestly, Dave, like, yeah, when's the last time you paid attention to the consumer chipsets?
Well, it's one of those things, you know, I was able to throw tax deductible work money at my rig, so I just kind of threw caution to the wind, which is always nice. But I remember what it was like to have to, you know, not only save up constantly and track for the best deal, but like trying to figure out, okay, what's the best combo I can get that's gonna meet my needs and stuff like that. You know, I've been there multiple times.
Yeah, we both have, which is why I would recommend used. Like, if it was my money, you're gonna get more bang for your buck used. If you can get like an i5 2500K with a motherboard and a decent fan that you can put like even a light overclock on it, that is gonna kill budget gaming for years. Like,
yeah.
And as parts keep dropping in price, like if one part breaks, getting a used one shouldn't be that hard because that was an insanely popular combo. But next one is from Frankie. He says, "Hi again. I've been wanting a gaming PC for a while now. In that time, I've learned a considerable amount about PCs, partly due to this podcast. Thanks. You're very welcome. So now it's come to the point where I wish to build my own. I have enough money, about 530 euros, enough skill to build them. I've dismantled, fixed, and reassembled many PCs and laptops. I hate you, Lenovo. And I think I've come up with a reasonable build. Here's his reasonable build. i3 6100, MSI Z170 Pro motherboard, 8 gigs of Kingston Fury RAM, an ADATA 128 gig SSD, a GeForce GTX 1050 GPU, an NZXT H440 case, EVGA 600 watt power supply." He says, now you might notice some of these are interesting choices, and they are, like why only 128 gig SSD is your only storage, why a case that costs, how much does it cost? $90 on a budget build, or 90 euros. He says, "I chose the H440 because I like how it looked, reviewed well. I built in it elsewhere. I loved it and I want it." I don't know, fair enough. You know, that's about as much as we've spent on our cases. You know what you want. You like that case, go for it. He says, "I can get a 2 terabyte hard drive later for mass storage." What do you think about that, Dave? Currently only has an 128 gig SSD in this build.
That is going to feel cramped very, very quickly, like more quickly than you're gonna think going into it.
That's like Windows and one game.
Yeah.
Like one modern game.
Yeah. And heaven help you if you download a patch for something.
Yeah, I mean, like a 500 watt spindle hard drive is so cheap. Heck, a 1 terabyte spindle drive is so cheap these days. Spend the extra money. Like if you
500 watt, is that what you said?
Yes.
500 watt. Get one of those 500 watters.
You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
Yeah, but like a 500 gig spindle drive or a 1 terabyte. I mean, that's what I do.
I think that would be a 512 technically, but you know, that's okay.
No, that'd be for an SSD, would be 512. Regular hard drives don't do 512. They don't do like the 256. Dave,
you are right. It has been a long time since I bought a hard drive.
You just sitting up there on your golden throne, raining down judgment.
Oh,
you're gonna
man, right.
You're gonna want a spindle drive with a sub 2 millisecond seek time. Dave, none of them can do that. Oh,
it's got a force field to protect you from the CIA. It's pretty sweet.
Hashtag YouTube money. And then he says the 600 watt power supply was the same price as the 500 watt and 450 watt power supplies. So I mean, yeah, I guess I don't have anything to say on that. He says, "I also plan to leapfrog up parts and upgrade regularly. Thank God I like tinkering." That makes sense because he's getting a Z170 motherboard and an i3 6100, so he's not going to fully take advantage of that motherboard's overclocking until he gets a K processor.
Yeah.
I mean, he could try to like work the workaround so he can overclock the 6100, but in practical terms, he's not going to really take advantage of it for a while. And then the GTX 1050 is also not like a crazy awesome GPU. It's a little bit faster than a GTX 760 or a 950, but that's not that crazy awesome either. So in 2 years or so, he'll probably want an upgrade from that. So if your money, you seem to understand why you want to spend the money on the things you want to spend it on. I mean, I say go for it. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah.
If I was going to change one thing, I'd say that DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM, try to get some 3000 megahertz. It probably isn't much more expensive. I'll leave that up to you. Your choice. You seem like you know what you're talking about. He says, I love the podcast. Keep it up. But Joel does get a bit annoying after an 18-hour road trip to Austria. Just imagine you were riding inside the car with him, going somewhere else. No, actually, I think we're all pretty annoying on car trips. But
not Joel, because he's listening to podcasts and drowning everybody else out.
unlike now, he's probably already asleep at this point, so we can say whatever we want. Like, we've done our job. He's nodded off to sleep. You know, our work here is done. But we'll go ahead and answer a couple more questions, I guess, just to, just in case.
He might still be listening, though, because, not having that Gwent trophy keeps him up at night.
Frankie had one more follow-up question. He said, I forgot to mention about a monitor. He's looking at this AOC 23-inch 1080p IPS 60 hertz monitor. He's just looking for a fairly basic 1080p IPS in the 100 to 130 euro range. Wondering if we had any opinions. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I looked at a couple others in that price range. That one is certainly as nice as many of the other ones, and it's not bad looking either. So if you just want to spend that much on a budget monitor, totally fine. Go for it. Our last question comes in from Ben, from same Benjamin from earlier with the bargain basement rig that's going to have the shark bait, the shark fin sticking out of it. Yeah. He says, "Okay, guys, I have two questions for you this time around. But the first one regarding a system I'm trying to help put together for a fellow classmate from film school. And Dave, this one's all you. He's hoping to have a rig capable of editing raw 4K footage using programs like Adobe Premiere Pro. I have no idea what his budget is other than the fact he expects it to cost a lot. So it's on his stuff to save for list. So as such, I figured I would try and get some insight from you guys on making the cheapest system possible that can still do a good job with editing raw 4K footage. So any suggestions?" Now, Dave, I didn't ask you to prepare a list ahead of time, but
yeah,
considering he's not buying it quite yet, I don't think we need a exact list. Let's just talk what the type of stuff he needs and then like a ballpark that he should expect to spend.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas actually. Intel has been going ham with their prices, and while I think you're going to want to go Intel for a high-end editing rig, I would actually suggest, if you're comfortable with used parts, doing what I did in 2014 and going for the best value used hexacore that you can find. There's enough people, I think, that are upgrading their high-end rigs to octa-cores that I would bet the used market is even more friendly than it was in 2014 for those kind of CPUs. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that'd probably be a good way to go. The only caution I'll throw in there, because this is something Dave has run into a couple times, is that some of the enthusiast chipsets can be a little bit fussier, I guess is the right thing to say.
Yeah, like 10% more wonk factor.
Yeah, like it's not like it doesn't work, but it's like, the USB ports require different drivers.
It's almost always something USB related. It's just always the USB.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like they're bad at all. And he got a hexacore for a very reasonable amount of money, and like it's awesome for video. But if you want to go cheap-ish for a really awesome performance, a used processor is probably going to be one of the ways to go. Alternatively, you can also wait and see what happens with Ryzen when it comes out. I mean, it might come out and like totally blow away the used market on hexacores, which would also mean they would drop in price. So like you could, if you can hold out a little while, and especially it doesn't sound like he's going to be buying it anytime soon, I'd say 6 months from now, you can much better answer that question. But so let's move on to things like GPUs. Do you need a GPU in an editing rig, Dave?
Yeah, especially if you're going to use Premiere, because Vegas does not make great use of the GPU, but Adobe's products do. What would be a good just parallel core crushing GPU? You don't need to go high-end gaming, but something like a good 1060 I bet would be perfect.
Yeah, I was thinking like a 1060 or a used 970, something with like a decent amount of CUDA cores, but also fairly power efficient, so you don't have to worry about that in your rig.
Because noise isolation is going to be somewhat important too. So I wouldn't skimp on your case either. Noise suppression over extreme cooling is what I would say. And in that case, I'd go for the 1060 over the 970.
I would too. Yeah, I agree, because that's going to be more power efficient. Now, Dave, does that mean you'd recommend my case over your case?
Yeah, if you don't really care what your case looks like and you don't like nice things, and if quiet's really important to you,
I mean,
yeah.
now when you say don't like nice things, you mean you like really nice things that are understated and classy? May I suggest the Fractal R5 case? No, but really, I would suggest my case, and Dave would probably agree. If you want to do long-term video rendering, that means your computer's going to be sitting there running the fans pretty hard a lot of the time, and my case has acoustic insulation all over the insides of the panels. And has tons of fan options, so you can buy some really nice, high-quality, quiet fans and get them running. Honestly, my computer, I don't even think about it making noise almost all the time. Like, if it's running full tilt and I'm not wearing headphones, I can hear it, but it's a very consistent, like, shh that fades into the background very easily, and it's not loud at all. Whereas a lot of flashier cases, and this is not me picking on Dave's case like I have many times in the past, Dave wants different things out of his case. But a flashier case is usually going to be a bit louder and not have as many cooling options, and you're going to hear it more. And if he really just wants to edit video, he probably doesn't care about any of that. So,
yeah,
boring. Memory. How much RAM do you have, Dave?
I now have 32 gigs.
Is not 28 right now?
No. Whatever I did last when I was doing all my cable management, like moving the computer around, I guess it reseated itself. I think I actually went in and reseated all the DIMMs too.
Nice.
And that appears to have locked things down again.
Hey, when in doubt, reseat the memory. I mean, that's always the thing. But we're both using 32 gigs of RAM. Dave, you're using DDR3 1600, right?
No.
1866?
It might be 1600. Honestly, I don't remember. But you're going to want to go faster than that if that's what I'm using.
Yeah, I went from 1333 to 2400, and I can tell a big difference for rendering. Now, the thing happens when you get Premiere running and it's running a render, or Media Encoder is queuing up some renders, it's going to take 100% of your CPU. It does not care what else you have going on. There's no way to prioritize it. I really wish there was. Like, if I could get my computer to cap at 95% so I could still use it, that'd be awesome. I still can use it, but going to faster RAM made a huge difference in how usable the computer is while renders are going. I didn't notice a huge difference in it making the renders actually faster, and I'm going to do a video sometime in the future testing that. But as far as day-to-day usability while I'm rendering, the faster RAM definitely helped. And he'll probably be going DDR4. He probably won't be going DDR3 by the time he gets one. But unless he gets like a used hexacore like yours. But yeah, a ton of RAM, and then past that, what do you think? Like just SSDs?
For sure. Maybe just one good SSD, like a 512, and then like a really nice 2 or 3 terabyte if you can swing it.
Because if he's talking raw 4K footage, that's going to be really high bit rates, and that's going to kill hard drives. Like you can like render to a spindle drive probably, and you can archive stuff on spindle drives, but for actually editing, you're probably going to want like an SSD work drive. Which is that's what I do for photo editing. I have an SSD. I edit all my photos on the SSD, and then I move them off the SSD when they're done. So I get all the benefits of the SSD, and I can archive them without it being a problem.
Yeah.
So that'd probably be my recommendation for that. Anything else? I mean, all the other stuff, I think a lot of it is like just personal preference.
Yeah, that basically sums it up, I think. That's going to be a powerful rig.
It will. I mean, tell your friend to write into us when he's actually ready to build. And I mean, we'll give you some more up-to-date recommendations. It's kind of one of those things, until you're ready to actually spend the money, there's no telling you what's good now that's definitely going to be good later. Other than, tons of RAM, a decent GPU, as much CPU as you can afford, fast storage. Like that's pretty much always going to be what you need for video editing.
Yeah.
But then Ben has one last thing. He says, I took your advice on overclocking my 3770K. I'm so sorry, Ben. I don't remember specifically what advice we gave you. But we told him to overclock it. He had already bought a cooler, which is a Deep Cool Gamax 400. He didn't think about the Hyper 212, sadly. Someone listens to this podcast and didn't buy a Hyper 212?
Congratulations, you special snowflake.
I managed to keep manageable temps with a 4.5 gigahertz overclock. However, on a whim, I decided to see how far I could push it and somehow managed to get stable overclock at 4.8 that could run benchmarks just fine, but under a 30-minute stress test, I noticed it repeatedly hitting 93 degrees Celsius. I backed it down to 4.5 again, but I wondered if there are any recommendations you have for an all-in-one liquid cooler that would fit in my case and do a better job at cooling. The case I have for now is a Thermaltake Versa 2. It's a micro ATX, pretty basic normal case. It does have a double fan slot in the top, so you theoretically could put an all-in-one cooler in there, but I don't know. I couldn't find exact specs on what size coolers will fit. But I want to back it up, Dave, a little bit. Now, the stock speed of his 3770K is around 3.5 gigahertz, I think. Joel has one. I don't remember what his was at stock.
That sounds about right.
He got it to 4.5. If it's good at 4.5, do you think it's worth going to 4.8?
I do not think so at all.
Okay. You've had to push your CPU really hard to get good overclocks because your hexacore is not a natural, incredible overclocker.
Mm-hmm.
So can you go run through like your pros and cons of pushing an overclock to its absolute limit?
Well, the main thought process behind where I'm at right now, which is 4.1 gigahertz, and it's been like that since 2014 when I got it. I made the profile and did the overclocking like a week after I built the computer, is that this is a work computer for the most part, and a little bit of extra speed is nice, and you might notice it in certain things, but more than anything, I wanted stability. I wanted to be able to set a render at midnight, and the next morning it's done, and I just don't have to worry about it. And if I'm live streaming or recording something where I've got like cameras set up and things are rolling, I don't care about the possibility of a slight, opening something faster or getting the render done in like, an extra 5 minutes earlier if there's a possibility of it blue screen. I want it to be stable above all.
Yeah. And the difference in performance, like you said, between 4.5 and 4.8 is almost nothing.
Yeah.
You'll see it in synthetics. You'll see it in some video rendering. You won't see it as much as you think. Like, it's just not that big of a difference. And now he doesn't say what his temperatures were at 4.5. Like, if they're in the high 80s, maybe you still need a liquid cooler. But it sounds like you've just hit the thermal limit of your CPU. Like, yours just doesn't want to go much beyond 4.5, which I think is pretty normal. I've had lots of luck. Like, I've almost never had a CPU I couldn't get to 4.5 in the past couple generations, ever since the 2500Ks, ever since Sandy Bridge. But there are very few CPUs I get stable at like 4.8, 4.9.
Yeah.
And I've only had 3 processors above 5 gigahertz ever. So like you're really getting diminishing returns, and you're going to be spending a lot more money in cooling and everything else. Like if you need that much extra performance and you're willing to spend $110 on a cooler, start saving for a better CPU.
Yeah.
I mean, a 3770K is still a great CPU, but you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't buy an all-in-one cooler. But if he wants to buy an all-in-one cooler and it'll fit in the top of his case, which I'm sorry, you'll have to measure your own case, Ben, because I couldn't find exact specs, because a lot of people don't seem to be buying that case and putting in coolers, measuring it, and talking about it online, or at least not people that I trusted. Dave, you are a lot more into all-in-one water coolers than me. What would you do?
Honestly, there's fantastic options out there. I believe what I'm using now is the Corsair 105, I want to say, which has been awesome. Downside being sound, because I was a dum-dum and I put different fans on it thinking more fan speed equals more cooling, and what it actually meant was more noise because they're not radiator fans. I'm actually going to be swapping those out here in the next month with some fans that are lower speed but correctly push air pressure through the fins of the radiator with less noise. But overall, there's been some pretty awesome advancements in all-in-one water coolers, and I've used 2 now for a total of almost 7 years successfully without any issues beyond me putting the wrong fans on it and it becoming louder. No leaks, no maintenance, no hassle, no worry. They're pretty awesome.
Wait, how many years did you say?
I used the C50 for 4 years, and I've had this 105 now for almost 3 years. So between 2 different coolers, 6-7 years.
Wow, I didn't know you were using one for so long before then. I thought you were on air for some.
No, my 2010 i7 build, my first i7 used a C50.
Nice. And was that a single slot, or was that a double fan radiator?
Single slot with fan on each side for push-pull. And actually, that cooler up until last November was still in that same computer at work. I moved it to my work computer. So that radiator, with almost no cleaning, by the way, it was terrible. It made it for over 6 years, and the EVGA graphics card in that computer died before the cooler ever had any issues.
Nice. Yeah, so
yeah, I'm a fan.
cool.
Or am I a radiator?
All right.
It's a joke about the cooling.
No, I know. We should just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut the feed. Cut the feed.
Yeah, I don't know. Feel like we kind of should have stopped about 30 seconds ago. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you for being part of the show.
You know what doesn't stop? My 105.
Thank you all for being a part of the show. As always, you can write into casualshenanigans@gmail.com to be a part of the show. We'll be back in another 4 weeks to do more stuff on this. That wasn't a smooth sentence at all. I'm tired. It's about time to bring this one in. It's late.
You heard him, Scrubs. Get those questions in. Otherwise, it's going to be a really short tech podcast next time, because we're going to actually record one in 4 weeks. So
yeah,
get us some questions.
Thank you, everybody who sent in questions. These were good. These were some nice. More unique ones this time too. We don't mind answering the other ones too, but if we get too many, we'll have to prioritize the unique ones over the ones we've answered a bunch of other times. Because as always, Google is your friend, and you should listen to previous episodes if you want just general CPU knowledge, and then we will answer as many as we possibly can of the other ones. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you for being a part of the show. Till next time, may your frame rates be high. Your temperatures low.
No.
I thought you would hate that.
Until next time, upgrade unnecessarily.
Ooh, that's actually pretty good. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later.
See you guys.